I'm Alex, 33 years old, and for the better part of a decade, I've been the designated, responsible one in my family. You know the type, the single sibling with a stable job, the one who remembers birthdays, shows up early to family events, and always picks up the tab when someone forgets their wallet. I work in finance, nothing glamorous, but I've done well for myself. I bought my own apartment, drive a modest car, and keep my expenses tight. The rest of my family, though? Let's just say they perfected the art of chaos. My younger brother, Brandon, 29, hops between gigs like he's allergic to stability. My older sister, Denise, 38, is married with 3 kids and constantly posts about grinding hard on social media, even though I've never once seen her hold a job longer than 6 months. And my parents, Dad especially, still believe that if you're not married with kids, your money is up for grabs. Christmas has always been a little tense for me. It's not that I don't love the holiday, I do. But every year, it turns into this bizarre pressure cooker where I'm expected to step in and help out a little more than everyone else. That usually means covering some groceries, maybe slipping a $50 bill into one of the kids' stockings when Denise forgets, or pretending I didn't notice that Brandon's homemade gift still had a barcode on it. But this year, it hit a different level. Christmas morning had its usual blend of chaos and cheer. Kids tearing through wrapping paper like raccoons, Mom insisting everyone eat something before presents, and Dad holding court in the recliner with his coffee like he was overseeing a kingdom. I sat on the edge of the couch, sipping tea, smiling at the noise. The gifts were nice at first. Everyone seemed to have gone all out. New iPads for the kids, luxury skincare for Denise, a designer wallet for Brandon, and a fancy espresso machine for Mom and Dad. I got socks. I'm not exaggerating. 3 pairs. And a card that just said, "You're the glue that holds us together." No signature. It was around brunch when things started to tilt sideways. We just sat down, scrambled eggs, waffles, overpriced salmon my mom kept bragging about, when I got the notification. My phone buzzed, and without thinking, I glanced at the screen. A charge from a luxury retailer. Another from a travel agency. And then a big one, $2,826.34 from the gift delivery service we'd supposedly used for the family's presents. My stomach dropped. I opened my banking app and saw them all charges made over the past week, racking up under my name. My credit card. Every single one. My hand froze on the fork. I stared at the screen, trying to process it, trying to tell myself this was some sort of mix-up. I looked up, and Dad was already watching me. "Oh," he said, with the casual confidence of someone who'd already rehearsed this. "That went through, huh?" I blinked. What went through? He reached for the butter. "The gifts. Brandon and Denise said they were a little short this year, and your mom and I thought it'd be nice if we all got something meaningful. And since you don't have a family of your own, it made sense for you to pitch in a little more." I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. Denise was feeding her youngest and didn't look up. Brandon was too busy smearing jam on his waffle to even pretend he wasn't listening. Dad looked at me again. "Alex, come on. It's not like you're broke. You're always going on about how well your investments are doing. Don't act like it's a big deal." Mom chimed in then, voice chirpy and clueless. "And you don't have to shop for a wife or kids. You're practically saving money, honey. This is just how families work." I nodded slowly. "Sure," I said. My voice didn't crack. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. I just sipped my tea and said, "This will be the last time." That seemed to satisfy them. Brandon grinned and lifted his glass. "To Alex, the MVP," he said, half mocking. Denise giggled. Even the kids started clapping, not understanding what they were clapping for. I excused myself right after brunch. Said I needed to take a walk, get some air. No one followed me. What they didn't know was that while I was out walking, I was on the phone with my bank. I had a good relationship with my bank's fraud department. Perks of being the guy who always keeps his books balanced. I explained the situation, walked them through the timeline, the unauthorized charges, the whole speech about how my card was clearly used without my consent. I knew the system well. I knew exactly which buttons to press, which phrases to use to trigger an immediate review. Within an hour, the card was frozen. Within 3, the major charges were flagged and marked for reversal. I got another notification that night, a group message from the family. Denise had planned a post-holiday trip to a ski resort. Flights, hotel, rentals. Non-refundable, of course. And all of it had been booked with the points and perks from my card. Points that were now gone. Her message was full of panicked emojis and passive-aggressive, not blaming anyone, but this is seriously messed up language. I didn't respond. The next morning, I got a text from Mom. Something's wrong with my card, she wrote. They said it was declined at the pharmacy. Can you check what's going on? I didn't answer her either, because that was only the beginning. I had spent years putting up with their entitlement, quietly paying for their messes, letting their comments about my freedom and disposable income roll off me like water. I let them guilt trip me for not being married, not having kids, not being more like Brandon or Denise. I stayed silent because it was easier than fighting. But this wasn't a misstep. This was a decision. They had decided I was their bank. What they didn't realize was I was about to close the vault for good. I got back to my apartment that night and sat at my desk, the Christmas lights I hadn't bothered to take down yet blinking quietly in the background. There was still wrapping paper on the floor and a coffee mug with a red lipstick stain I didn't recognize, probably Denise's, from the one time she stopped by last week to check on me and ended up borrowing my wireless headphones. I stared at it for a while, then opened my laptop. I wasn't angry. Not in the way I used to be. Years ago, I might have cried, might have called a friend to vent, or tried to reason with my parents like a responsible adult. But this wasn't that version of me. This version was calm. I had facts, and I had power, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to use both. First, I pulled up a folder I hadn't opened in over a year. Family expenses. I'd kept track of every transfer, every temporary loan, every purchase I made on behalf of someone else. I wasn't obsessive, I was just organized. Maybe a little too organized. I scrolled through the spreadsheet. Birthday gifts for the nieces and nephews, hotel rooms I'd booked as a backup. When Brandon's card got declined, the down payment I helped Denise with just until tax season. And the emergency root canal I covered for Dad that somehow still didn't warrant a thank you. Total, $41,763.12 over 7 years. I took a breath and added the Christmas charges at the bottom. Then I started typing. It began with emails. Professional, polite, borderline cold. One to Denise. Hey, just a heads up, all charges related to the group trip were reversed by the bank. Since it was booked under my account, they flagged it as fraud. I suggest calling the resort directly. One to Brandon. You'll need to return the watch. The charge didn't go through. I'd recommend doing it before they issue a penalty. One to Mom and Dad. Unfortunately, I can't continue covering incidental expenses. Please ensure you update your payment methods going forward. Also, I'd appreciate it if you stopped using my Netflix account. I've deactivated all shared access. Then came the more subtle pieces. I logged into the shared Dropbox folder our family used for planning trips, sharing photos, and managing group expenses. I removed myself. Then I deleted the folder entirely. I changed my PayPal password, cut off all auto debits linked to Brandon's random side hustles, and canceled the Amazon family plan I'd been footing the bill for, the one Mom thought was included with Wi-Fi. Still not done. The next day, I went to the post office and mailed certified letters to each of them. Yes, actual physical mail. Inside each envelope was a printed spreadsheet detailing what I'd spent on them over the years, not to shame them, but to inform them. Attached to each was a typed note. This isn't about money. This is about boundaries. Going forward, I won't be contributing to family expenses, trips, gifts, or emergencies unless previously agreed upon in writing. If you have concerns, please contact an accountant. I've included an itemized breakdown for your records. Happy New Year, Alex. 3 days of silence. Then the call started. Mom first, sobbing, of course. Why would you humiliate us like this? A letter? Really? I calmly reminded her she never once asked before charging that pharmacy bill to my card. She said that wasn't the same. Family doesn't keep score, she hissed. I let that one hang in the air before responding. No, family doesn't steal either. Then Denise, you're being dramatic, Alex. It's Christmas. Everyone's broke in January. I told her I wasn't, and I didn't plan to be, especially not for someone who couldn't even be bothered to sign a card. She called me selfish. I called her entitled. She hung up. Brandon texted me. Just 2 words. Wow, petty. So I texted back. You owe me $6,200. Should I send you a Venmo request? Or would that be too dramatic too? He didn't reply. But the real twist, the one that made my hands shake when it came in, was from Dad. He didn't yell. He didn't mock. He didn't say anything at first. Just sent me a picture. The living room, empty. No tree. No gifts. No espresso machine. Just him and Mom sitting on the couch, arms crossed, looking like they'd just gotten home from a funeral. Then the message, your mother is crying. She couldn't pay for her heart medication today. Do you feel better now? I stared at it for a long time, longer than I cared to admit. And here's the thing, I didn't feel better. Not yet, because I knew this wasn't over. I knew that was just their opening move. The guilt, the emotional manipulation, the public performance of heartbreak, all of it was coming. They were regrouping, retooling, preparing to turn this around on me, to make me the villain. But I was already ahead of them. Because what none of them knew, what none of them even thought to consider, was that the last time I let my dad guilt trip me, I'd started documenting everything. The texts, the bank transfers, even the time I bailed out Brandon after that misunderstanding at the electronics store. I had records, emails, screenshots, legal advice, all of it, neatly organized, quietly prepared, because I'd suspected this day would come. And I wasn't just done being their ATM. I was about to become their reckoning. And trust me, I still wasn't done. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, quite the opposite. It was the first time in years I felt alert, clear, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling around in for decades. I made myself a cup of coffee around 2 a.m. and sat on the couch with my laptop resting on my knees. I opened a blank document and started typing, not out of anger, but with purpose. It was time to take everything I knew, everything I'd endured, and make it count. By morning, I had compiled a 22-page dossier. Sounds dramatic, I know. But when you've spent most of your adult life being bled dry by people who love you just enough to keep you useful, you start seeing everything like a ledger. There were dates, transaction IDs, text messages, photos of receipts, even voice memos I'd saved out of habit when Brandon once begged me to co-sign a car lease. Which I hadn't. Thank God. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was this. I now had a full timeline. One that, if I needed to, I could show to a court, a bank, or even just a friend to explain why I'd finally cut ties. But more than that, it was a mirror. Something I could hand back to my family and say, this is what you made me. I didn't send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. And besides, I had something else in mind first. Saturday morning rolled in cold and gray. I dressed in jeans and a jacket, grabbed my folder, and drove across town to visit someone I hadn't seen in a while, my Aunt Carla. Carla was my mom's older sister, the black sheep of the family. She never married, lived alone with 2 greyhounds, and had spent most holidays traveling abroad to avoid the screaming. But she'd always liked me. At family reunions, she used to sneak me her second dessert and whisper things like, "You're too smart to get stuck here." When I showed up at her door, she blinked once and said, "Took you long enough." We talked for 3 hours. I showed her everything, the charges, the letters, the screenshots. I thought maybe she'd tell me to go easy, that blood is blood, that forgiveness matters. But instead, she said, they always did treat you like a safety net. About time it snapped. Turns out, she had her own stories, ones that made mine seem mild. My mom had borrowed money from her years ago, never paid it back. My dad once tried to rope her into a shady tax write-off scheme. Denise had asked her to babysit for a whole week and never even offered gas money. We weren't black sheep. We were survivors. Carla gave me the name of a financial mediator she trusted, someone who specialized in quietly unwinding family entanglements. In case they try to drag you into court or smear your name, she said, handing me a card. Cover your bases. I left with something even more valuable, clarity. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was self-preservation. Back home, I drafted a message. Simple, straightforward. I posted it in the family group chat, where for once, I had something to say that wasn't a payment confirmation or a holiday greeting. Hey everyone, I've decided to take a step back from all financial involvement moving forward. That includes gifts, shared expenses, and emergency support. I've been covering more than my share for years, and it's time I refocus on building a life of my own. I won't be discussing this any further. Please respect my boundaries. The read receipts started popping up one by one. Denise first, then Mom, then Brandon, finally Dad. Silence, then chaos. Denise replied with a long paragraph about how I was tearing the family apart and letting money get in the way of love. Brandon followed up with something about how I was lucky to have family at all, which was rich, coming from a guy who once tried to pawn my laptop during a rough patch. Mom's reply was a voice note. Crying. Muffled words. I didn't even play it. Just deleted it. And Dad? He didn't message. He called. I let it ring. 3 times. Then I blocked his number. And that was when the calls started coming from other numbers. Aunt Teresa, Cousin Greg, even Denise's husband, who hadn't spoken to me since 2019 when I called out his MLM scheme. All suddenly concerned. All deeply shocked that I would abandon the family in such a public and hurtful way. So I decided to go a little more public. I made a post. Not on Facebook. I knew better than that. No, I posted on LinkedIn. A professional, respectful statement. After many years of quietly shouldering financial obligations on behalf of extended family members, I've made the decision to step away and invest in my own future. Boundaries are not betrayals. They're lifelines. If you're struggling with guilt around saying no, I promise, you're not alone. It got over 200 likes and a dozen private messages. From coworkers, former classmates, even a few distant relatives I barely remembered. People saying, "Thank you. I needed to hear this." I thought it was just me. That night, Carla texted me. Just 2 words, "Nice move." But the next morning, things took another turn. I was eating breakfast, quiet morning, jazz on in the background, when I got an email from Brandon's business account. Subject line, cease and desist. I laughed out loud. Attached was a badly written PDF threatening legal action for defamation, loss of reputation, and emotional distress. He was demanding I take down the LinkedIn post and issue a public apology. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to the financial mediator Carla had recommended. Then I opened a new email to my employer. A request to update my emergency contacts. Because the people listed there, Mom, Dad, and Denise, no longer represented my support system. They were no longer family. Not in the way that mattered. And what none of them knew was that I had just filed paperwork that would take everything one step further. I wasn't just walking away from their finances. I was about to legally sever the last thread that connected us. And I hadn't even told them what I was doing with the trust fund. I learned long ago that with my family, silence was safer than transparency. But that trust? That was the final card. One they thought I didn't have. When my grandfather passed away, my mom's father, he left behind a modest but well-managed trust. The stipulations were clear. The fund would be split evenly among the grandchildren, but only upon reaching the age of 30. There was a clause, though, a quiet line my grandfather had insisted on that most of the family forgot. If any heir has received over $10,000 in monetary or material support from another heir over a cumulative period of 10 years, that support may be deducted from the final distribution, pending documentation. At the time, it seemed like one of those overly cautious, archaic legal terms. But my grandfather was a smart man. He knew this family. And now, so did I. The trust was scheduled to pay out in March, 3 months away. Each grandchild would receive approximately $125,000. A life-changing amount. Enough to pay off debt, buy a home, start over. And since my cousins had all kept to themselves and lived their own lives, the only people eligible for deduction under the clause were me, Brandon, and Denise. So I called the trustee. A woman named Joyce, sharp as a knife and equally precise. I made an appointment, showed her my meticulously kept records, signed declarations of support, printed receipts, and even the certified letters I'd sent. She reviewed everything with professional detachment and finally said, "It's uncommon for this clause to be triggered. But I'll be honest, your documentation is airtight. This could reduce their payout significantly." "Good," I said. "I'd like to proceed. Would you like them to be notified before the distribution is finalized?" I smiled. "No. Let them find out the morning it lands." Because I wasn't after drama anymore. I wasn't after revenge. I was after peace, and this was the last door I had to close. The days that followed were eerily quiet. My phone stayed silent. My inbox stopped blinking with family emails. Denise deleted me from Instagram. Brandon unfriended me. Mom stopped sending chain messages and guilt-tripping religious memes. Even Dad disappeared behind the veil of his own pride. It was like I'd become a ghost, and I loved it. For the first time in years, I started sleeping better. I started waking up without that weight on my chest, the one that used to make me dread birthdays, holidays, even random Sunday texts from my siblings. I went on walks. I booked a trip. I took a cooking class. I laughed with people who never once asked me for money. Then, March arrived. I was in Spain, Barcelona, sipping espresso at a quiet cafe by the marina when I got the email confirmation. Trust disbursement complete. I opened it slowly, watching the sunlight flicker off the harbor, and smiled as I read the line. Alexander Cole, $125,000 disbursed. Brandon Cole, $36,570 disbursed, adjusted. Denise Martin, $22,220 disbursed, adjusted. And just below that, a short footnote. Reductions based on cumulative support received from fellow beneficiary Alexander Cole between 2015 and 2023, per Clause 7B. I closed the email and raised my glass to the breeze. It tasted like closure. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. The first message came from Brandon, of course. 5 missed calls, then a text. What did you do? Then Denise. Is this some kind of joke? Joyce won't return my emails. Tell me you didn't actually take our shares. I didn't reply to either. The next came from Mom. This one I expected would be the hardest, but it wasn't. Alex, please. Whatever you did, undo it. Brandon has rent due. Denise is in tears. Your father's furious. I don't understand how you could do this to your family. I stared at the message for a while, then typed back. I didn't do anything to the family. I just stopped letting the family do things to me. Then I blocked her. A week passed. Then another. No calls. No emails. No sudden change of heart. They didn't apologize. They didn't reflect. They didn't beg for forgiveness or promise to do better. And I didn't expect them to. Because people like that don't change when they lose access to your money. They just change their target. But I'd taken myself off the table. Completely. I moved. Quietly. Sold the apartment I'd once let Denise crash in. Closed the accounts Brandon had access to. Changed jobs, even changed my number. Not to run away, but to start. And somewhere, in the silence they left behind, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not because I won. Not because I'd managed to outmaneuver a toxic family. But because I finally chose myself. Because after 33 years of playing the dependable, silent, self-sacrificing son and brother, I finally said, no to the guilt. No to the emotional blackmail dressed up as tradition. No to the manipulations masquerading as love. No to being everyone's financial emergency plan. No to being the background character in a family drama I never agreed to star in. And I'll be honest, some nights, I still think about them. About the Christmas mornings. The birthdays. The noise. The chaos. The laughter that sometimes felt real. But then I remember, love without respect is just control and prettier wrapping paper. So here I am now, sitting on a balcony in a city I never thought I'd visit, writing this all down for the first time. Not because I need closure anymore, I've had that. But because maybe someone else out there is still buried under the weight of obligation, guilt, and family duty. Maybe someone else is still paying for everyone's gifts, silently swallowing resentment with every transaction. To that person, I say this. It's not your job to bankrupt your life so everyone else can feel rich. Say no. Say it twice. Say it until they hear you, or until you're too far away for them to reach. Because family isn't who needs you most. It's who respects you enough to never expect more than you're willing to give. And if they can't do that, let them feel the silence. It costs you nothing. And them? Well, they'll finally learn what your generosity was really worth.